And at 6 o'clock, good evening, everyone. I'm Brian Allen. Andrea is off tonight. There's been a lot of talk about Amtrak in South Dakota since the Federal Railroad Administration identified two possible new routes through the state. While there's plenty of supporters for the expansion, they're going to need help from lawmakers in Washington to make it a reality. Cooper Seamer in studio with our 6 o'clock top story tonight. Cooper.
Hey Brian, Senator John Thune says it's been tough to listen about Amtrak expansion in the recent years with all the funds set aside from the bipartisan infrastructure law, knowing that South Dakota wouldn't immediately get a chance at any of those projects. But if Amtrak expansion to South Dakota were to come up in the Senate, he says he's be all ears.
South Dakota's history with passenger rail service ended in 1969, just 2 years before Amtrak was formed to save many of the most important routes in the country. That's a history that isn't lost on Senator John Thune.
Talked about my dad's era, you know, when they'd hop on the railroad in Murdo, take it to Mitchell for the day, shop, and come back on the railroad that night. So that was a different era.
Now, though, that history could become the state's future. The Federal Railroad Administration has identified two possible routes for Amtrak expansion through South Dakota in its long-distance service study. It's not yet known what the cost would be to build out and operate those routes, but Thune says the benefits it could bring to South Dakota's economy and tourism are worth exploring.
We ought to be certainly open to, and if we can find a way to make that work, especially with some of the resources that are being made available through the infrastructure bill, South Dakota certainly ought to look at doing that.
The expansion could also upgrade the state's current railroads, which would be a benefit to South Dakota's agriculture and industrial sectors when exporting goods.
We're always looking for ways to improve freight rail because we are a farm-to-market economy, and we've got to have freight railroads to get our commodities to the marketplace. So that's always been a huge priority.
The final report from the Federal Railroad Administration will include some of the cost-benefit analysis that Thune and other lawmakers will be looking for when supporting routes. Thune says while it's too early to say if he'd be a yes for passenger rail expansion to South Dakota, he says the state needs to consider all of the possibilities.
There's just there's some great history there and a legacy. And I guess the question is there a future? And I hope the answer is yes. We'll find out, and if the answer is yes, we'll do everything we can to try and bring it about.
Now, the Federal Railroad Administration still expects that final report to be ready to Congress by this spring, but advocates say they expect that to be pushed back due to the amount of public feedback for the final revision.